There are now people in their mid to getting on to advanced teens who have never known, obviously, a world without the web. In fact, there may be 20-year-olds who've never known anything but that. Have they developed strange thumbs? Do they have peculiar ways of talking and listening? Do their eyes glaze over when they have to concentrate for more than 30 seconds? No, I don't believe any of that. I'm not particularly negative or pessimistic about the social qualities, the linguistic qualities, the concentration qualities of Generation Web, as they're called. I honestly believe that if you were to go back into the 1920s and take an ordinary, semi-educated 15-year-old and place him next to an ordinary, semi-educated 15-year-old now, you would find the one now knows more, understands more, is more socially confident, is more aware of the rest of the world, is more able and more adept at research, may not be able to say their 9 times table as fluently or repeat amo amasamata mamasamati amant. They may not be able to do that. Is that such a great loss to an old-fashioned person like me? I'd love to think people could do both, but let's get real about this. Connection is what humans crave. It's what we are all about. It's something that separates us from animals. It even comes before the fact that we have language, because the language is an example of a, if you like, a neural technology we have created to answer this need for connection. We are the social animal par excellence, or by devilry, if you like, if not necessarily excellence. We are constantly in need of connecting with people for friendship, love, sex, knowledge, growth, enmity, territoriality, all the imperatives that drive us as human beings. And we've created villages and towns to help us do that, and roads, and now we've created something else that allows us to do it even more. Where people make their fundamental error, who criticize all this and think it's a danger and that it's reducing our capacity to act as proper human beings, is they think it's all this. You either sit in front of a screen of some kind, or tapping away all your life, going lol, and being childish and not writing in proper English sentences, or you sit in an old-fashioned study with books and you read properly and you engage properly and you go for walks. Well, I do both. And most people do both. It is not one or the other. Now, you may say, I've had the advantage of a classical education. I've grown up in a tradition in which I've understood books and I've understood history and I've been interested in these things, and I like Latin and Greek, and I like the smell of a proper book and so on. That's true, but I have made quite a lot of online friends. I don't even know what gender some of them are. They're people I chat with, either personal or direct messaging in forums and Twitter and so on. Some of whom I think are very young, and you can sort of tell they are, and who astonish me occasionally with their knowledge of literature. In fact, I was having a conversation just the other day with one who was talking to me about Evelyn Waugh, and I think she's 12, and she seems to have read every book that Evelyn Waugh ever wrote and have a very intelligent view of this great novelist. And I almost wanted to say, but how would someone who's 12 like you ever have read these books? And I think, what am I saying? Of course they might have done, and spend a lot of their time on a forum as well. It's not, the two are not mutually exclusive.
As social animals, which you conjecture we are, we now, historically, our interactions, our relationships, our tribal capacities would have been walled. They would have been within the physical proximity. And now there's the opportunity to outreach via Facebook, via Bebo, via whatever social networking means that are available. How do you think this is going to affect the younger generation growing up if they're able to have relationships that are purely online based upon communities of practice or ideals?
The human social history has been filled with inventions and developments and techniques that have threatened the way we arranged ourselves. A very good example that seems so peculiar is that Anthony Trollope, the English novelist, best known for writing books on politics and the church, was also a civil servant of some importance, and he invented the postbox, the pillar box. And he was distraught that his invention might undermine the Victorian family. Now, at first, this seems like, why would it do that? Well, until the time the pillar box arrived, the post box, the little red thing we put a letter in, a woman had never been able to write a letter and get it delivered without giving it either to a postman or to her father to be sent. The middle-class woman had no ability to connect with a man except through the graces of her parents, particularly her father. And Trollope, who was, although he was a fine novelist and an innovative thinker, was very traditionalist, and he hated the idea that there were women communicating with men without their father knowing about it, because they could just slip a letter into a postbox. And similarly, if you go back a little further to the time of Jane Austen, people found the idea of the novel simply horrific. People could not bear the idea of children sitting around reading. They should be, if they were going to read, it should be sermons and history, but certainly not novels. And they should be going about the place, sitting up straight and at dinner parties and walking and being healthy. And then, of course, along came radio, and people couldn't bear the idea of people sit around the radio, and then television, and then games, and then computers, and all these things seemed to those who were not brought up in them somehow to diminish, because we're all so proud of our youth. We think our youth and our childhood was somehow, if not perfect, it was, even if it was imperfect, it made us suffer. How dare these children now not suffer the way I did? They should be having the kind of life I did, made to read, made to do this. They should not have this freedom, this access. Or if they do, while I can approve of it, I ought to suggest that it's dangerous, that it's going to go wrong. Well, yeah, I mean, some genies, when they're let out of a bottle, can cause problems, and they certainly can't ever go back in the bottle. When cars first arose, people were horrified at the deaths on the road. Horrified. They couldn't believe it. I mean, there were hundreds of people being squelched every day. It was grotesque. And if you just braked in a car at 30 miles an hour, you'd kill yourself on the steering wheel, you'd break your neck. People were dying all the time. Did they say, oh, that's it then? We can't have cars, sorry. In the same way as if someone says, actually, these mobile phones do give out microwaves, and they will give you brain cancer, are we going to say, oh, well, that's the end of that technology then? Not on your Nelly. There's a risk-reward ratio here, and for us, the reward is so great that whatever the risk is, we try and contain it and understand it at best, but what we don't do is say the risk is too great. The great question about the web is, has it democratized us? Has it become an egalitarian?
Yeah.
Just wait for this. Seems the time itself.
It's just, you're not worried, are you? It's fine, it's difficult. Because the thing is, if you get rid of these, then suddenly everything else,
Yeah.
it's a background wet wheel, that's all. But okay,
Just the beginning
all right,
answer
okay,
sometimes can be a bit
okay. The great question is whether or not the web has been a force for democratization, whether it has made us all equal. There are those who will say the moment it became monetized, is this terrible word, the moment it became really commercialized, the moment the large corporations that control the pipeline started to buy each other up, and you started to get these huge mergers, that somehow the pioneering spirit went out of it and the freedom died, people will say. I'm not quite as cynical or quite as pessimistic as that. I do genuinely believe there is a dispensation in politics in the West, that the focus, the weight of authority has shifted, that it used to be the ballot box was the way people expressed themselves. Now, there is no focused way that people express themselves on the internet, but I think that is the next challenge for democracy, is to use the fact that this surely is the way that we can harness vox populi, vox dei, the will of the people. It seems to me that it's a real threat to the established estates, as they used to be called. There were the 4 estates in Britain, the Lord's Spiritual, the Lord's Temporal, the Commons, and the 4th estate, as it was always known, the press. The press has been deeply upset and worried, of course, by how particularly Google and other aggregators of of content that they have spent a lot of money assembling have been able to distribute it freely, such that people now regard it as almost their right to have free news, even if they're outside Britain and it's not through the BBC and their license fee. So there's that side of it where the press feel somehow their authority is under threat, and through things like Twitter and Facebook, individuals and celebrities and politicians are finding other mouthpieces, other ways of connecting than newspapers. It used to be that if you were a politician or a celebrity, you wanted to set the record straight, or you wanted to sell a book or something, you had to kowtow to the newspaper. Now you don't. You simply ignore them. I mean, if you're a big American star, you've got over 1 million followers. I mean, no newspaper's going to provide you with the kind of coverage you can provide yourself, and you can control it. And newspapers hate that. It speaks to their contempt for the stupidity and vanity of stars anyway, one we all share, about myself included naturally. But B, it just takes away their power. So that's the press's worry, and that's why they always try and sort of, there's a very uneasy relationship with it. On the one hand, they mock it. So Twitter, which is a good example, when that arrived, the press said, oh, the most banal, ridiculous, fatuous people telling you what they had for breakfast. Oh, I did this. And look at this Twitter stream by this moronic celebrity. How boring is that? 2 weeks later, join our Twitter stream at daily whatever, and suddenly they're desperate to jump on it. Absolutely. And politicians, there are dozens of politicians who think, oh, damn, why did I speak out against Twitter just 2 months ago? I said it was banal and stupid, and now it means I can't have my own Twitter stream, and everyone else has, and I'm losing out. How do I backpedal here? Because no fault of their own, they didn't quite see how it was going to develop. This is in microcosm what's happened with the internet. And so that's the press. Then government. Government is a much trickier one. It's a much huger issue.